All right, gentlemen, we got Patrick Reusse in here 3 days a week, Tuesdays, Wednesdays, Fridays. You can also find him on Mondays on Reusse Unchained. And, we're celebrating Jim Harbaugh Day here, potentially, boys. Got our khakis, our cleats, got our
Yes.
big
I
giant
wish
hats.
I wish I owned a pair of khakis. I don't own a
Oh,
pair of
wow.
khakis,
Wow.
but I did break out a fresh Diet Coke and one of my nicest white T-shirts today. So
It's a way to
I'm
Look at
celebrate.
you, man. You are
I'm
a classy, classy guy.
I'm
And
ready to go, and I think he might be one of the few guys that I could win a dressing contest with, Harbaugh. So
I need to see this.
it's astounding to me. Let me say this: it remains headache causing, but certainly any thought that he was going to go to Miami to be with Stephen Ross might have blew up yesterday with the
Yeah.
Brian Flores story. So anyway,
So here's the let me throw the latest out here, and then we can all react. I've got two things. I've got the latest reporting on the current situation from John U. Bacon, he's the author who's close with the Harbaugh family. He's been reporting on this for over a week. And then later I've got a great summary from Tim Kawakami,
yes,
who covers Bay Area sports for the San Jose Mercury News on what happened at the end of the San Francisco run. But here's the latest from John U. Bacon. So Jed York, the 49ers owner, has been bad-mouthing Harbaugh for several years to NFL owners, including the Wilfs. And Michigan alumnus Jim Stapleton, who is a Vikings minority owner since 2005, has been telling people inside the Vikings organization this entire week to hire anyone but Harbaugh. And here's a quote from the article. Stapleton was also accused of sabotaging Michigan coach Rich Rodriguez while he was there. And despite his 4-page letter refuting the charges, he had his sideline pass revoked at Michigan. He's now one of Harbaugh's critics, hoping to persuade the Wilfs to reject him. And the question, according to John U. Bacon, is, can Kwesi Adofo-Mensah convince the Wilfs to hire Jim Harbaugh despite people in their ears saying, don't hire Jim Harbaugh?
wow. This yeah, I didn't know that they had minority partners that weren't named Wilf myself. Did
Oh yeah,
you? They
yes,
have a few.
yeah,
So Stapleton, some Eastern guy that they buy real estate with or something, who's
yeah.
also
2005. He at one point in time before this was an executive with the Tigers. So he goes,
this guy. Okay,
yeah, I've
so
seen him before. So
he's well, it's that's a pretty good source if it's a Bacon who's the author of Harbaugh stuff. So well, I would think that our new GM, who's apparently in on Harbaugh, has more influence than the very minority partner Stapleton. But boy, I'd hate to be Patrick Graham coming in here after you served up the public and the media Jim Harbaugh, right? And now we're going to say, well, we're going to go with the defensive coordinator of the terrible New York Giants. I would hate to be Patrick Graham in that
It's
situation.
kind of a lose-lose both ways. If he gets the job, people, I mean, he'd make millions of dollars, but people would be like, oh, really? But then if
Mm-hmm.
he doesn't get the job, especially in light of all of the Brian Flores allegations in the lawsuit, you just put a black man through a 9-hour interview knowing you were probably going to hire Jim Harbaugh. Like it,
I have the impression that his relationship, though, with he's the guy that Adolfo Mensa brought up and was the first guy he interviewed, right?
yeah, yeah.
And they already had Raheem Morris, and they had they had they had already were in good shape for taking care of the Rooney Rule, right? They didn't have to drudge up Patrick Graham for that reason. So I would think they were out there 9 hours yesterday telling him, Harbaugh's going to get the job. We've already talked to Jim. He'll take you as the defensive coordinator. He'd love to have you, or he's gonna be a director of player personnel or something like that. I got a hunch that I don't think they were putting him through the motions. I got a hunch they were telling him how they want him in the organization in some way. Would be that's just my guess, but it sounds to me like he and Kwesi are close enough that they wouldn't be doing something like that. So I don't know. What do you think?
if Jim Stapleton at the end of the day gets his way possibly and stops this, it's going to speak to a large amount of dysfunction in Kwesi's first attempt to
Yes.
create change here. That's the problem. It's like if you have this many potential cooks in the kitchen,
Yes.
this goes back to who's in charge.
Yeah. Yeah. That it does. It. They presented the Mark Wilf front in a pretty, it was for me a double speak way, but it was effective. It's been effective to have him be the out front man instead of stumbling, bumbling Ziggy, and saying, running that basically setting up that press conference last Thursday, and yeah, this is not something that you want to. You don't want some guy who's not, I don't know what percentage he owns, but some guy who's not really, shouldn't have that much influence in the organization, right? So
Exactly. Yeah.
So how risky, quote unquote, do you think it is to hire Jim Harbaugh, Pat?
I don't think it's that risky at all. I mean,
Like if it blows up,
he could. It depends upon how sensitive you're going to be out there. What I don't know. What you said you had the comma.
Yeah. Tim Kawakami from.
I've always misspelled. I know him. He's a great guy.
He's a great reporter. Yeah.
I just say hi, Tim, when I see him. I keep it simple.
So he wrote in 2014. I think this is actually before the final season, because this was February 2014, and he summed up all the issues between Trent Baalke, the ownership, and Jim Harbaugh. And then, and this is coming. I mean, this is coming off like a 12-win season, and then going into the season, it was basically, even if you win the Super Bowl, he's out.
Yeah.
Right. So I'm just going to read a couple paragraphs here. Baalke and Harbaugh were initially football lovers when they first connected. Right. 2011, they both loved football. Both loved the grind. But after 3 or 4 years, it became obvious that they were totally different kinds of football maniacs. They're both incredibly driven, intense football lifers who are consumed by the sport and the pursuit of victory, et cetera, et cetera. But when two football maniacs start butting heads, they have nowhere else to go in their relationship. You think they're going to go watch movies together? Football is the only thing for both men, and when they begin to disagree on football matters, even the littlest things become epic battlegrounds. Harbaugh is impulsive and loves to create chaos and man-to-man confrontations because he's better at navigating those situations than anybody else. It'd be tough for any executive to deal with him on a day-to-day basis over the long term, which Harbaugh himself tacitly acknowledges. And also he began creating chaos with, essentially he would go up to press conference podiums and say, we need to pay this guy. And he made it at one point us versus them, not like versus the Seahawks, but us versus our own front office and ownership group.
But who in the long run proved to be a little better football operator? Him or Troy Baalke, who brought in Chip Kelly, and had to fire him. They all got fired 2 years later.
Jim Tom Sula, too.
Huh?
Yeah, there was a year of Jim Tom Sula in there as well.
Yeah, they did not have a winning season, I think, for 4 years after he left, after going 41-17 or something. I think that he certainly would be on his good collaborative behavior here for a while, but you have to realize that he's going to want to have his way, but he's also going to win. He's Zim on steroids, but twice as good a coach because he knows both sides of the ball. And what impresses about him, he goes to a Super Bowl with a guy who can't hit the broadside of a barn with a pass, Colin Kaepernick. He comes up. He goes this year to a college football playoff, and people are saying, well, they got killed by Georgia, with a quarterback who isn't as good as Tanner Morgan. There are years when he's throwing the ball around, and there are years that he's, at Michigan, all they did was run for about what was it, 10 weeks, all they did was run. And then they're playing Ohio State and they're lighting them up, throwing it all over. I think he's a hell of a coach, and you just don't want to cross him, I think, because then there's something that happened between him and Balky, and he said, I'm going to win this one. And I think that our young genius, if there's one thing he might be pretty good at, it's people, don't you think? After he's been around. And
well, also, Pat, I was telling Judd and Dex this yesterday. So he was around during the train wreck 2 years of Jim Harbaugh and Trent Baalke, and now he was
around though, kind of in the really.
He was the manager of football research. He wasn't like leading a department, but he was in the building and probably has an opinion on what happened.
Yeah, and the fact that he's the guy saying, yes, let's interview Harbaugh makes me think he knew who the real idiot was in that relationship. So
exactly.
I mean, and to say that one of his great flaws was that he was possessed at football and had no interest in going out to dinner, with Troy Baalke as a downside. Is that right? You got to go have dinner with him. You know who might have had dinner together twice in 17 years? Bud Grant and Jerry Burns. Yeah. They said goodbye in the day at the office, and hello when they were sketching out the game plan. They had no problems with each other, but one guy thought duck hunting was the stupidest thing in the history of man, and the other guy thought golf was the stupidest thing in the history of the man. They had Bud didn't go to dinner with anybody but his hunting buddies who were going to pick up the check. That's it. So, I mean, we're not relating, obviously, a different time and everything, but this idea that they had nowhere to fall back on if it wasn't arguing about football. Yeah, well, okay, that's your life, And let's face it, the Harbaugh family is wired a little different. John comes off as, kind of a reasonable fellow, right? And as survivor. But who the sister's married to?
Crean. Yeah, Tom Crean.
Tom Crean.
That guy's a psycho too.
Who's nuts? And they say she might be the most competitive person in the family. She might be more competitive than Jim. So if you want to win now, take a flyer, man.
This is also why, though, when you blow out your previous staff, you should just say, we're going to find the best people possible. Because the problem now is I guarantee they're going to be told, well, if you want collaboration, guys, this is not the guy, right or wrong. This is why the whole family thing, like we're going to build who cares about that? You're right, Pat. If you want to win, hire the best people to win. Now, where I think Kwesi might be pretty smart too is this. Baalke's problem evidently was he basically wanted to go downstairs in the locker room and critique the players and have a role as a pseudo coach. That's what Boone said.
By the way, that's what he's going to do now in Jacksonville. They're like going to demote him or move him to a different part of the organization so he can be like hands-on with players.
They're going to have to fire him. But Kwesi, if Kwesi says, hey, look, I'll play at times the bad cop, contracts, cuts, you are the good guy, Jim. That's where I think it works.
Yeah, I think, if he wants to drop by and say hello to the guys on the sidelines and stuff like that and saunter over, I don't think it'll be a problem. But
not blocking techniques.
We don't want you chumming up with them and making them guarantees or anything like that. It's pretty obvious that isn't Harbaugh supposedly saying, you give them to me and I'll coach them type of thing for now, right? Mm-hmm. I mean,
he doesn't want to deal with he doesn't want to be a GM is what it sounds like. He's going to have strong opinions on personnel. And let me read you because you guys are hitting on some more things from this Tim Kawakami recap from 8 years ago. Harbaugh is a rabid defender of his players, and while Balke does as much to protect the players, I've reported there was a disconnect, for instance, in the Aldon Smith situation and some other situations. Harbaugh makes repeated public requests for the 49ers to give veteran players new contracts with increasing boldness. And I'm not going to read all of this, but a lot of instances where Harbaugh would storm into the personnel offices and demand, like, we need to trade this guy, or like he would just have these impulsive, strong opinions on players or the draft or whatever it is, and you got to manage it.
That was also 10 years ago. He might have mellowed out a little at 58, but there's no doubt as to the day that Michigan called him in last year and told him that he had to take a huge pay cut or they were going to get rid of him. That was the end with them, right? It was going to end as soon as he could make it end, especially after he basically stuck it to him this year by beating Ohio State and beating them bad and then going to the college football playoff. But it was, you begged him to come when when they got him there and they got him back as the big Michigan man and that whole thing. And, either fire him or give him another shot. But when you call in and tell a guy he's got to take a pay cut, that they're especially that type of a personality. I mean, if PJ goes 4-8 next year, can you see our guy calling him in and saying, well, you got to give us back that race we just gave you? I don't think that works. By the way, Viking fans, Gopher fans, if he leaves, it means Fleck's going to Michigan. $10 million buyout through this year. A, I don't think he'd be going to Michigan. B, Tim Campbell, I looked at, Matt Campbell, his buyout's 4 and Fickles is 3. And they're not going to pay an extra 6 or 7 million to get PJ, especially now that they have a $500 million judgment against them because of the pervert doctor there that the university's paying at Michigan. So don't worry about PJ leaving for Michigan.
Pat, I'm guessing you'd make that trade-off. Jim Harbaugh in purple, but it means PJ leaves the Gophers for Michigan.
You know what? When I listened to Kwesi last week before this whole thing came up, I basically gave up the fight on nonsensical language. It's
7 mentions of culture in that press conference, according to my
hold on a second.
Control F search.
Which isn't even a good sentence for PJ. 7 messages.
PJ crowd surfs his players after wins. Are you really telling me that you're accepting now?
The University of I'm not accepting that. It's silly.
Thank you. Thank you.
I want to see Harbaugh crowd surf, which I guarantee there's a chance he might.
It is interesting. Who was the defensive lineman who was great out there that he kept trying? Aldon Smith.
Yeah.
He couldn't go a week without getting in trouble somehow, and he kept bringing him back. So he is loyal to his players.
Yeah.
There might be hope for that. Who was the cornerback we ran off? That Gladney might be time to bring back Gladney. Who knows? But
I will say, to your point earlier, I have heard that Harbaugh has asked people behind the scenes in preparation for the Vikings or whoever it may be, what could I have done differently at the end of my San Francisco run? So he's at least he's coming out of it looking back, thinking, all right, it wasn't all Trent Baalke. Maybe there's some things I could have done differently too, and he's recognizing it because it was, like you said, it was 8 years ago.
We all become reflective as we get older and think that we can mellow out in certain areas, and some of us fail, but that's okay. Hey, by the way, Brian Flores, if Stephen Ross doesn't file a defamation suit within 2 days,
it's true.
Then what? Then he doesn't want to talk about this.
$100,000 for every loss.
I cannot buy it.
Okay, Mr. Ross.
I
I'll start
cannot
at
buy
quarterback.
that he. I know he's an arrogant, loose cannon type of owner, but he can't be that stupid. Can he?
I wouldn't put it
If
past
it's
him.
not in writing, absolutely.
That
Well,
organization
Miami,
is such a poorly run cesspool for 20 years.
Miami is they didn't release a statement today. I would imagine they're trying to get it legally. Is, but I got to think he's got to file a defamation suit, doesn't he?
I mean,
if you
he
put that in
doesn't,
a lawsuit against him.
well, how about too? Imagine being Bill Belichick, who would love to just get away for like 4 months, and
Who's
you're just
trying to
trying to
act
congratulate
interested.
one of your guys, and you send it to the wrong guy.
Yeah, he's
God.
trying to act interested in one of his fellows who he probably doesn't give a damn about.
Congratulations! Oh my God, I'm hearing such great things from the Bills.
How is Bill the king of the exclamation mark? Like, I never saw him as an exclamation mark guy.
No, I did not. No.
3 exclamation marks at one point.
It's
Bill
amazing,
probably
yeah.
got home and the wife or girlfriend or whatever he has these days must have said, "Boy, you're a dummy. Don't ever do that again. What's wrong with you? This is, you don't know anything about 2022 communication. Stay off texting, you dummy."
That's a good point.
Call
Deflate
people
gate and now this. That's
Call
a very
people
good
at
point.
4 a.m. like your buddy Parcells used to do, and don't stay off the text. But anyway, the NFL is really. I heard somebody mention this yesterday on an NFL network on the radio. I bet the NFL is really going to like to have this as a topic on Radio Row next week. And,
Oh my God!
Every time. Oh, and by the way. Trent Baalke, all this stuff is going to be very.
Brian Flores' timing is impeccable.
Oh yeah.
Well, it's also like Brian Flores won. I think he finished above 500 the last 2 years, even though they make the playoffs. First time in like 20 years in Dolphins history. And then they fire him because he's a bad communicator. Because he did. There's the two stories out. There's the $100,000 to lose games, but then there's also the story about Stephen Ross wanting him to tamper with, it says, an unnamed
Tom Brady,
prominent quarterback. It sounds like he arranged a meeting on his yacht between Tom Brady and Brian Flores at one point, and Flores was like, "This is it. We can't do this. This is tampering." Or this
he was still I'm sure Ross has done some crazy stuff, but now listen. In retrospect, I would have paid $100,000 to my coach to lose games to get Joe Burrow. So in retrospect, he might have been wise, but it's not something good to have leaked to the public. That's for sure.
Yeah.
But you're right. The Dolphins are. It is. The Wilfs drive me crazy in the sense they're giving all this credit for all the money they spend, and they're spending to the cap all the time. And basically, they got a free $1.15 billion stadium, and everybody else spends to the cap all the time.
Yeah.
But we are a little more stable than some of them, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah, I mean, you got some crazy owners in that league, and Ross is another one of them. So.
Yep. All right, Pat. Good stuff. Happy Jim Harbaugh Day, if it does indeed come to fruition. And we'll talk to you. We'll see what happens. We'll talk to you.
All right. Hey,
nice shirt too. Thank you.
Good digging up that stuff from the author. I hadn't heard that they have a Michigan guy in there bad-mouthing him. Stapleton's a Michigan guy too.
He is a Michigan man. Yes.
Okay. All right.
A good Michigan football man.
Oh yeah.
I can envision Jim Harbaugh just wandering through the airport with his giant Michigan hat on, his khakis.
Some people think they're just going to give it to the offensive coordinator. They got to go get a sexy coach, don't they? Campbell or Fickle or somebody, don't they?
You talking about Michigan?
Yeah, they can't just.
There's some Matt Rule steam that he's been such a train wreck at Carolina.
Oh yeah, well yeah. Who you think Michigan's going to have a parade for him?
I mean, they're kind of screwed right now. I don't like.
Yeah.
A lot of these teams are already into their spring practice schedules and stuff. So
I mean, Matt Campbell is an extremely ethical guy, but if Michigan comes calling, you got to go. Don't you? When you're in Ames, don't you have to go? Yeah. I mean,
by the way, Red Panda making a return to Williams Arena tonight. If you guys want to get over there and watch the halftime show, Red Panda,
pretty good.
The unicycling,
She's
the
pretty
bowls
good. She's
on
not
her
as
head.
good as the Fargo Moorhead Arco Cats, right?
Sure.
The gymnastics crew,
Okay.
but she's pretty damn
See,
good.
this is where I would subscribe to Judd's theory of she just wants to make sure that she retires before she goes over the age cliff, because you don't want that to
Her
happen
cycle
during a
got
halftime
stolen
show.
like 5 years back. I said, Red Panda, retire.
Then she had a
Ideal
new
time.
cycle that wasn't
out.
quite grooved the same way, and
Get
she
out.
had a series of mistakes.
That's what I'm saying. She should have got out.
It was bad.
I'm
Yeah.
so
was pathetic to watch.
much into Harbaugh Day. Harbaugh Day. Who do we have playing?
Purdue.
Yeah, it's not going to be pretty.
Our little size. We'll handle that 7'4" guy, no problem. Don't worry about it.
I think if you stack a couple forwards on top of each other,
Come over here. Who's their smallest guy and get on Eric Curry's shoulders? Is that okay? Is that legal? All right. See ya.
All right, see you, Pat. All right, wrapping with Reusse here, Mackie and Judd, and the SKOR North YouTube channel.